questions. And this is because ethical questions don't seem like they can be answered empirically. They can't, by that I mean they can't be answered by going and looking for the answers in the world, at least not obviously. And this was a view shared by G. Moore, who we got this photo of here, and whose views we're going to talk about slightly more in just a second. So, to take an example, it seems like science could tell us that animals feel pain, but it can't tell us that it's wrong to torture them. And this relates to a big piece of philosophy, which is called the kind of is-ought gap, which is developed by David Hume very famously, which is the idea that you can't move from statements about the way that the world is to statements about the way that the world ought to be. It seems like the is statements are going to be the realm of scientists, whereas the ought statements are going to be the realms of philosophers. These normative statements don't seem like they can be understood or accessed in the same way. So if we can't gain knowledge of ethical truths by looking for them in the world, if our sense perception doesn't have that epistemic authority to give us answers to ethical questions, then what does? How can we make progress in ethical questions? Because it seems like we do have some ethical knowledge, at least to most of us. We're going to assume that we at least know that some things are right and wrong. It's not like we're completely in the dark or there's no ethical facts. And so the puzzle here is to try and make sense of how did we get this knowledge? How did we work out in the first place that some things were good and some things were bad? And in steps G. Moore here, who makes all these kinds of arguments to try and reject what he calls naturalistic ethical theories. So utilitarianism that we've already brought up is premised on the idea that we can identify moral properties, so properties of good and bad, with natural properties in the world, namely happiness and unhappiness. And Moore didn't think this was very convincing. And there's a whole list of reasons why, but we're going to kind of skim over those for now. Instead, Moore gave this kind of rival position, which he called non-naturalism, or is sometimes called moral intuitionism. And so Moore argued that we can still have ethical knowledge through our intuitions. Instead of looking at the world kind of directly through our kind of sense perception, Moore argued that we have this other kind of faculty of intuition that enables them to access some moral truths intuitively. And indeed, Moore felt that some moral statements were just kind of self-evident and they were basic. So this isn't to say, crucially, that every moral question we just have the answer to like that. We can, look at the way that the world is and simply intuit the answer to all of our moral difficulties. This clearly is not true, given that all of us have been faced with morally difficult situations which we don't intuitively have the answer to. But Moore felt that there was at least some things, some kind of building blocks of ethics that were just the things that we could access based on our intuition. These were things that we could know for sure just by using this kind of special faculty of intuition. And so this is kind of a compelling view, at least in some respects, because it allows us to avoid some of the problems that Moore felt that these naturalistic views have, while still hanging on to some kind of ethical truth. And it seems like it answers this puzzle that we had about how can we explain how we have ethical knowledge if it isn't going to be found in this kind of either utilitarian or scientific way. So this is kind of an epistemic argument that Moore is giving for intuitionism and why we should trust it, because we have this special faculty that allows us to access certain basic moral truths.